All right, and here we go. First off, I'm going to say is thank you very much, William Arends, again for providing the material for the Arends Translation and Attrition (ATA) for LiveStream 122 for us. And secondly, that I am going to mispronounce some words, so I'm not even a couple. I'm not even going to try. So we'll just go from there. And the nice thing is you're going to see, well, you see a little bit right there. Is that William Arends discusses how he goes about translating some of the material, which is great. Anyways, here we go. Translator's note. I make these translations in a two-step process. In the first draft, I try to get as close as possible to a word-for-word translation. Often this translation does not read smoothly in English, so in the second draft, I try as closely as possible to translate the idiomatic German into an idiomatic English while still retaining the meaning of the original German text of the article. This process also helps me to catch any errors that I might have made in geography, grammar, or spelling in that first draft. The articles I'm sending you from June 5th and June 10th, 1917 are from the Königsberger something or other Zeitung in the province of East Prussia, something or other referring to the name of the publishing house that was printing this newspaper. Under the names of Rutzner and that place, this publishing house has been in existence since 1640. Holy smokes. I find this to be another reminder of what was lost to German culture when East Prussia was divided between Russia and Poland after 1945, and Königsberg became Kaliningrad. In this, I hold Germany completely responsible, not only the Nazi regime's unsustainable belligerence, but also the Kaiser's government for sending Lenin and the Bolsheviks back to Russia, creating the conditions for the establishment of the Soviet Union that became one of the starting points for the totalitarian ideological madness that disrupted so much of the course of international affairs in the 20th century. In using different newspapers from different regions of Germany, I'm trying to see if there are any variations in how these outlets view the war, domestic policies, and world affairs. Of course, that is not happening if these papers are using the same censored sources of news, such as the Wenzel Telegraphic Bureau, WTB. And that sounds very similar to what's been happening with the Allied newspapers. I've seen repeated articles. So bang on. The article is translated from the 5th of June, containing information about battles on the Western Front and on the Italian front. There's also a short report about demonstrations in the USA, really, concerning the draft levy and the American war aims. We didn't hear about that. The articles from the 10th from the Allied newspapers. So another thing we didn't hear about, which would be interesting to see if William Arends is going to find, there's no mention of the French mutiny so far, and they've been going on. I'm going to go and find out how long. Anyways, the articles from the 10th of June include another report from the Western Front and a brief report about the mistreatment of German POWs by their French guards. The Königsberger something or other newspaper, Tuesday, 5th of June, 1917, morning edition. The publishing house, formerly Rutzner, established 1640, a failure for England on the West Front. 180,000 Italian losses at the 10th Battle of Isonzo. On the Wischite Bend, the English, in a long prepared operation, nevertheless, this time resulted in an especially high cost and still was an unprofitable effort. Their full artillery barrage did not have its required effect and was not helpful in advancing the apparently planned main attack. Rather, at many other positions elsewhere and further to the south, they undertook another series of attacks. Here they also had no success. But this had been noted by their army reports out of London that stated the English troops who had advanced could not hold their ground against the German counterattacks. The French had received new information about the offensive capacity of our troops around the Craonne and Bray. Some of those troops who had seen action elsewhere were from West Prussia. These troops have recently taken 250 French POWs as well as 30 machine guns. The Pariser reported that the French were not concerned with insignificant matters, but where reports would be unfavorable to the French, they would want to put forth higher numbers of German prisoners that had been taken since Easter in combined French and English assaults. It is necessary to say that these numbers must be noted with reservations. On the other hand, there are indisputable estimates of the Italian losses in the 10th Battle of Isonzo, as reported by the Austrian-Hungarian General Staff. half of the entire Italian army group have taken part in this 40-kilometer wide offensive. Holy smokes. Remember, that's only 2 Derville Creek hexes. That's ridiculous. Of these troops, 16,000 Italian prisoners have been taken prisoner, and over 160,000 soldiers have been killed or wounded. This means that their losses have gone over 180,000 as the cost of this offensive. Those allied with us should be proud of the results of this defeat of one of our enemies. And how would that be? Let's say 16,000. That's roughly about a division, would you not say? So that's about 11 divisions. You're saying that they've or even more. Like, my goodness, 12 maybe. Demonstrations in America demanding a declaration of its war aims. Wenzel Telegraph Bureau, WTB, June 4th. A special publication out of London reported about the great demonstrations in the USA, especially in New York, in favor of the Stockholm Conference. Awesome. And against the planned troops levies drafts of the American government, and about how the public wanted a clearly stated set of USA war aims. Remember, the Stockholm Conference is for the socialist thing. Holy moly. Königsberg, thank you so much, William Arends. The June 20th morning edition, the day when the English had to pause out of fatigue. No advantages gained despite the placement of new, heavier units, fierce fighting along the Souchez Brook. There's a growing exhaustion of the Englishmen caused by the heavy losses that they have taken. These losses happened in such a way that yesterday they had to refrain from taking part in a great clash of arms. Only their artillery east of Messines and Wytschaete spoke for them throughout the night, using their destructive fire against our positions. How little effective this has been up to now was discovered by the Australians in their futile attack in the vicinity of Messines. The evening first brought new battles on both banks of the Ypres-Comain Canal, an unfinished canal that was in many places just a reedy depression. Oh my gosh. And the fight by the crossing of the Douvre River. But at these places, our defense was at its highest. At the same time, they had made advanced attacks to a certain extent with their reserves from the Canal of La Bassée up to the Souchez Brook in the southern part of the battlefield. But here it was shown to them that the Germans had not weakened the defense of their troops on what had been formerly the main front of the battlefield of Flanders. This defense held despite the sorties of considerable strength of the attackers. These positions remained without exception in the possession of our defenders. Against these thrusts carried forward towards our trenches, regiments from the Hesse and Silesia again drove those enemies out. This day of battle proves that the English army's offensive, despite all of its heaviest sacrifice of blood, was not capable of staying in the flow of its advance, and therefore their troops were quickly at the end of their effectiveness. Once they came to a stop, they then had to face the situation that a new plan must be prepared again. As someone in their headquarters viewed it, the English troops must begin once again with their destructive massed artillery fire. As our enemies try to overwhelm us with their methods and breakthroughs, so should we be prepared with the defensive systems of our formations in depth in such a way that the enemy infantry will only have the slightest success in any of their assaults, and we will hold on to the greater part of what we have had conquered. Our enemies want to force a decision on the battlefield. Because of this, they have made this summer offensive following on their broken up offensive of earlier in the year. Thus, they carry on this insanity from one attempt to another. Their initial successes that they would want to build into a victorious campaign lead these people and their troops to the point of exhaustion. But even if they have the courage to go on further, those troops will only be led to the slaughter. Perhaps these futile attempts have advanced their understanding further than that of someone still serving an apprenticeship, so that now they could recognize the reality in which we already have an unshakable belief that this German front is unshakable. This is so cool because I just finished watching the Indian Idol Great War channel, I think for this week roughly, and they talk about how Douglas Haig right now has been going for a week long, talking with Lloyd George and whatnot about going, hey, I think we can really do another Flanders offensive, aka Passchendaele, Third Battle of Ypres, and they're going through it, and he goes, don't worry, if it fails or something, I'll be able to pull out just like Neville did and whatnot. And it's like, oh brother. Anyways, it sounds like the Germans have clued in quite a bit of already of this type of thing. It's just amazing because it's like Douglas Haig is no longer in an apprenticeship situation yet. I just find this, especially right up here. What is it? Because of this, they've made the summer offensive following on their broken up offensive of earlier, which is the Nivelle offensive. Oh my gosh. And here they are. And they just keep on doing it. So this is really good stuff. Anyways, French bestiality. Holy Moses. Wenzel Telegraph Bureau, WDB, 9th of June. A French sergeant from the infantry regiment number 16 who had been captured near Monthau in German Hochberg on the 31st of May told us of a serious incident as follows. After the French attack on the 20th of May, a number of German soldiers had been taken prisoners. While being transported to the rear, some of these captives had lost their lives when a sack full of grenades set to go off were placed near to them. The exploding hand grenades cut through some of the captured soldiers, killing them, while wounding other prisoners who were close by. Yowzers. Well, it sounds also what I've been hearing from the other reports there from, Rob Johnson there. He was talking about accounts of the British, and you can start seeing like the higher casualty rates or the lower amount of prisoners, the further away you are from the first line trenches kind of thing. Of course, you don't want to be bringing your prisoners back. So, oops, I guess that guy didn't make it kind of thing. Not saying that's what happened, but it sounds a lot like, anyways. Translators note, these next articles are from the German newspaper from Berlin. They cover the situation in Greece to include the German view of the abdication of King Constantine and the increasing occupation of Greece by the Italians. This is freaking awesome. Because as we know, we've been only getting it from the Allied slant, and boy, oh boy, is it ever, oh my gosh, is it ever biased. I'm sorry that I was not able to get any of this material from any of the 3 newspaper issues in this email to you for the 14th June live stream. No worries at all, since much of the content of these articles mirrors what you brought out in your after-hours newspaper reports. At any case, these articles from the German newspapers will give a much different perspective on the same events that you have covered. The 3 articles on the events in Greece cover the first administrative aspect of the abdication. The second is a copy of the letter of the abdication that King Constantine had to accept before he was granted transport out of the country. And the third is about the Italian occupation of the city of Janina, Greece, and into the region of Epirus. Awesome. The German newspaper, a nonpartisan newspaper for national politics. Berlin, Wednesday, 13th of June, 1917, evening edition. The King of Greece abdicates by reasons stipulated by the Entente. King Constantine has abdicated in favor of his son, Prince Alexander. I'm just going to say this as well. I think people have known who's following this stream and the channel. I'm pretty biased about how I feel about what's been going on with Greece, with the Allies. And when I read this the first time, I'm like, I agreed. I think with everything the German newspaper said, and I went, oh my gosh, am I ever in trouble? Anyways, here we go. The time of trouble. So the King Constantine has abdicated in favor of his son, Prince Alexander. The time of troubles for the King of Greece has come to its end, which could no longer be in doubt in these recent days. The Entente powers have achieved their goal of removing the king with whom they were uncomfortable. Now Venizelos has been paid his price in this land of political desperados. Already a few days ago, information came through the lines that a plan for the solution of their Greek problem was coming about through decisive measures, the main one being the bringing on of Jonart by the Entente to the post of High Commissioner for Greece. Jonart had first been chosen to be the French ambassador to Greece. However, it was preferred by the belligerent powers to put him into the position of High Commissioner, thereby granting him a greater authority. What tasks Jonart would be expected to accomplish at this assignment can be best ascertained by what the French press have previously written. The Petit Parisien has declared whoever it is who controls the direct line of public affairs in Greece can no longer be articulated. However, Jonart's political position will become more clear in the next few days. The difficulties of the Entente have surely caused exaggerated fears to have sprung up, but how the king and the Greek government still preferred the circumstances to be able to speak against the Entente, especially around the issue of preventing them from confiscating the harvest of Thessaly. Remember, we saw that in an Allied newspaper article a few weeks ago about them talking about make sure you get the crops. So they were pretty open about it then. The Times let out the supply of foodstuffs for the Army of the East had to be secured. Under the former government, the Thessaly harvest was in danger of being made unavailable for the Army of the East. The Greek government had intended to get that harvest into their hands in order to bring about an end to the fears of a Greek bread deficiency, making the blockade of the Entente ineffective and void. Remember that? Therefore, the first duty of Jonart was to make measures to bring the Thessaly harvest under the control of those in the area who were allied to the Entente. In conjunction with the promised annexation of Albania by Italy and the Italian occupation of Giannina, Greece, and with the doubtless pressure caused by the promotion of Sarai, Jonart was allowed to reveal even further the unique brutality of the Entente as they sought to achieve their final goal, which was to have Greece brought under their control. The cause of the famine in Greece made it imperative to make the reports about it represent the position of the Entente's allies, and that these reports would be the only ones that would be allowed to transmit what they deemed to be right. Remember, they also took control of the newspapers, for goodness sakes. Correspondingly, the Havas reported on the situation of the decisive crisis in Athens. Last Monday morning, the High Commissioner of the Allies, Jonart, had, along with the Prime Minister Zymis, at a conference that they were both in the name of the belligerent powers, requested the abdication of the king and the naming of a successor to the throne in that meeting. Translator's note, I'm sure that the next sentence was meant to be sarcastic, especially the double exclamation points in parentheses. And let's go find out what William Arends is talking about. Zymis knows about the unselfishness of those powers, with their main goal being the unification of all Greek lands, as is the basis of their Greek's constitution. Still, Jonart replied that he wanted the final resolution of the status of the king to occur that evening after a meeting of the Crown Council had been convened, consisting of all its members with the exception of the former prime minister. Despite certain agitations, the peace on the streets of Athens was not disturbed. Only after the abdication letter that had been produced by Zymis and Jonart, with the copy that was sent to the king being accepted as a formality by him, would the king be able to speak about his situation. He was then to be put on an English ship bound for Italy, after which he was to be transported to Switzerland. The troops that had been stood up under the disposition of the High Commissioner of the Entente Powers had been given an order not to land before the final disposition of the king had been known. The communication of the abdication, Athens, 13th of June. The Prime Minister had given the High Commissioner Jonart the answer from the Crown in the following letter of acknowledgement. Lord High Commissioner, after France, Russia, and Great Britain, with their note of yesterday, made certain the abdication of His Majesty and King Constantine, with the name of the successor being put forward, the undersigned Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs have the honor to bring this knowledge to Your Excellency. His Majesty, thinking as ever about the well-being of Greece, has concluded that he must now leave Greece, and had thus named Prince Alexander as his successor, the seal of Zymis. The occupation of Greece, Rotterdam, 12th of June. As the new Rotterdamer Courant reports, another dispatch was given to the Daily Mail by the press in Athens, whereby the Italian troops that occupy Giannina have ordered the Greek civil administration and its military garrison to leave that city in 15 minutes. What the hell? The Italian troops again advanced forward to occupy the area around Previsa and the rest of Epirus. It was also reported from the same source, even though it had been based on a rumor, that the troop transport ships of the Allies have arrived in the Gulf of Corinth. As far as I know, it is not a rumor, it's the truth. Troops have already landed in Gira. And there you go. Thank you so much, William Arends. And I'll pop me on a little quickly here. And I hope you guys have a great remainder of your weekend and a great week. And I think we're going to be going off to the ATA right after this bit. But thank you so much.